So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Hey, I'm your host, Brett Swarts. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best financial independence and passive income wealth advisors in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. He is returning. If you listened to the previous 8-minute intro to this episode, Bruce shared his biggest frustration with capital gains tax and making sure you're getting clarity on your options. You can go back and listen to that episode. But I'm excited to have Bruce back. So Bruce Petersen is a syndicator, a multifamily expert. He owns multiple properties, has also completed 1031 exchanges. You can find him at the apt.guy.com. It's short for apartment, apt-guy.com. And he also has a new book out that he wants you to take a peek at, because he's learned some stuff the hard way, and he wants to help you make it easier for you by avoiding certain challenges. We're going to dive into that right now. That book is called Syndication is a Big. You can fill in that word there. So let's dive in to get to know Bruce a little bit, and then dive into his book and his strategies. Hey, Bruce, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Would you give our listeners a little bit about your background and your current focus?
Current focus, again, I syndicate large apartment complexes, but how I got here, barely squeaked out of high school, dropped out of college, and didn't have a whole lot of skill set there, right? Didn't have a lot of marketable skills. So I fell into retail. I did that for 18 to 20 years, hit a wall. I'm 5'8". I had ballooned to 240 pounds. I was depressed. I was physically nauseated going to work every day. And I thought, this can't happen. I want to kill myself. I have no family. I don't have time to date. So I had to walk away. I walked away at 43. I'd been a Dave Ramsey guy my whole life, right? Always living way below my means, investing everything I could invest. So I was able to walk away at 43 because I took care of my finances throughout my life. But then I decided, okay, I got to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. Keep hearing great things about real estate. So I started looking around and found a mentor to teach me how to invest in syndicated apartment deals. I've been doing it since 2012 and have purchased a total of 6 properties for over 1,100 units, currently have 940 units. My wife's my business partner. She's the CFO of everything we do. I'm the CEO. We're very vertically integrated. We have a construction company, asset management company, property management company. Just wrote the book. Staying busy as I can during the lockdown, but that's kind of who I am and what we're up to now.
Thanks for sharing that. And before we dive into some of those strategies and really just talk about multifamily investing, I'm curious, who is Bruce growing up? I think we're all been given certain gifts. They're God-given gifts. Some people call them superpowers. But what was that one gift that you were given, Bruce? And how does that help how you help people today?
Well, my gift really, I think, is EQ. I've got a very high level of EQ, but going back to the childhood thing, super inquisitive. I got to know. Again, I was not a good student at all in a formal setting. I hated high school. I hated college, and I wasn't cut out for it. So, back in 1986 when I started in college, it was a big deal, and it was a shameful thing if you didn't have a degree. So, I had to go get a degree. Dropped out of college. It's kind of embarrassing. 10, 15, 20 years later, I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of everything I've been able to accomplish without a formal degree. So again, I'm super inquisitive. I want to know everything I can about everything that I'm trying to do. I go all in, all the way, and just always asking questions. Why? How can I be better? I'm always, I was the kid. Let's see, I think I was 13 years old. I had seen a newspaper laying in the house, and there was an ad. It was the business section, but there was an ad in the business section that talked about compound interest. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting, but I don't know what that means. So I'm 13 years old. I call up the bank and I get a teller, I'm sure. I don't know who the hell I talked to, but it was probably a teller. And I said, hey, can you explain this thing to me? So at the age of 13, I was already thinking there's something to this. I was the guy that sold baseball cards, comic books, the lemonade stand, all that. I've always been looking for something. And again, I hit that wall at 43 with retail and realized, okay, this is the time to really figure this out.
And I love that you burned the ships and you went all in. I imagine that was, a bit scary, a bit nerve wracking. But at a certain point, you gotta pursue what needs to change, right? And so you made that transition, and it sounds like you had a good mentor and a good coach to help you along the way. And I'm curious, now that you're on the other side and you're coaching folks, what's the most rewarding part of what you do?
Helping others create the life that I've got, right? So first of all, you said that it was really scary. Well, it really wasn't scary at all. It was, the option was die, right? And I know that's very hyperbolic, but that's where I was headed. I was fat. I was depressed. I was physically nauseated going to work. That was not working. So to me, it wasn't that big a deal, but so many people get to that point you're talking about. It's scary. It's, there's a lot of stress. Well, I looked around at what I had and I was like, this is not going to work for the rest of my life. My life will be cut short. So for me, it was a no-brainer. But the most
it was
rewarding,
scarier not to change, right? So what you're saying.
oh God, yeah. There was so much more risk in not changing, physically and emotionally, both. And
Right,
then,
exactly. It's like something
spiritually, if
has
you
to.
will, because I didn't have, a significant other, and walking away allowed me some downtime finally. So I actually met my wife. Yep.
Beautiful, right? How that works out, right? And how things can change when you make some positive changes in your life. Would you give us an example, and maybe you can dive into the book a little bit, of how multifamily investing, or in particular syndicating and partnering with folks, can help you create and preserve more wealth?
We'll say so. Real estate investing, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, most people know something about it, but there's crazy tax advantages. You're owning a business when you buy an apartment complex that come with crazy tax advantages. So it's the best way I've found to create wealth. But then we'll talk about syndication, because that's what my book is about. Syndication basically is going to take whatever you could have done by yourself, and you're going to multiply that by 10 to 100 times. Because now, instead of you having to come out of pocket to buy $1 million property, you could put 5 to 10 to 20 people together to raise the money needed to go buy that property. So it allows you to scale. When you're a syndicator, you actually have a business. The people that invest with you, it's not a business for them. It's a side thing. It's passive income for them. Think of it like a dividend paying stock. There's no effort required from them. But for me, taking on the risk and the liability and the stress, it is my full-time job, so I get compensated for it. So it can make you fabulously wealthy. You can make a ton of money doing this. There's all kinds of ways to monetize it in a way that's totally legit, totally ethical, and that your investors are more than happy to pay. It's a lot of work, though. It's a whole lot of work, and there is a lot of stress. I'm not embarrassed to admit that I've cried at night. I've cried on my wife's shoulder because it gets stressful. Because if something doesn't go as planned, even though you tell everybody before they get into the deal with you, these are projections. These are my best educated assumptions based on what we've done over the years, but things still can and probably will go wrong. And when those things go wrong, and if I've said to somebody that I project you will get a 6 to 8% return by the end of the first year, and I'm only hitting a 5 or a 6% return because something surprised me that I couldn't have known about, that's stress. I've had the government take $5 million of my money. That's a lot of stress. Right? They don't tell you, they just take it. And you got to figure out what's going on, because that $5 million is not my money. I'm a syndicator, remember? So that was my investor's money, is gone. So It's very rewarding, incredibly lucrative, but my Lord, there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people just don't understand.
So I've got to dive into that. When you say take your money, are you referring to tax? Are you referring to some kind
Oh
of
no,
penalty?
no,
What
physically
kind of,
gone. It's out of my bank account mysteriously, right? So what happened is I executed a wire to purchase a property. I execute the wire at 9 o'clock in the morning. I drive to the property and I hang out waiting for the all clear to say the seller had received the wire. Usually takes an hour or two. 3 hours later, nothing. 4 hours later, nothing. 5 hours later, nothing. My attorney finally calls me about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, says, Bruce, you got to get out of that property. Because I'd already walked into the property now. I'm already setting up shop because the previous management company just turned around and walked away before we had the all clear. So I walk in, I'm setting up everything. She said, get out. I'm like, what do you mean get out? She goes, you don't own it. Oh, crap, that's right, I don't. So what had happened is the name of the property I was buying was the name of a known drug cartel in Colombia. So the federal government, a division of the federal government, OFAC, they stepped in, they grabbed the $5.2 million wire, and they have 2 weeks that they can take to research this thing, to figure out what's going on. Are they laundering money? What's going on? So they don't tell you, they just take it. So it took 3 days to get to the bottom of it. They took it on a Friday. We finally did get it closed. One business day. We did get it closed on that Monday. But again, you talk about stress. Oh my Lord, try to tell your investors that, we didn't get the property closed today like we thought. That's unfortunate. And I'm sorry about that, but I got you one better. I don't know where anybody's money is, So yeah, try having those conversations. It is not fun.
that might be one of the wildest closings I've ever heard of. I did a podcast with a client of mine, and he did a 8-part exchange where he traded Rolls Royce, so one of his clients' partners did, for a Hawaiian burial grounds place to build condos, and it was an 8-leg. That was crazy. Now this one is a drug cartel potential. They thought same name, and they just, because of the same name, they don't even tell you or ask questions. They just take the money, and it takes 4 days to clear, and then it clears out. But that must have been a relief once you got the money and the deal closed. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. So it worked out, right? We're actually trying to sell that property right now. We've held it for almost coming up on 4 years. And in my world, you usually hold a property for 3 to 5, maybe 7 years on average. So yeah, we're trying to sell it now. It's been good, but yeah, that first few days was highly stressful.
I'm curious, what was the one big domino? You mentioned the transition. It was hard, and there's big challenges. But I'm always curious with the apartment syndicator like yourself. What's the one big thing that once you knock that over, or once you implemented that system, or once you figure this out? I know it's a lot of little things, but what's the one biggest one that propelled your success and/or your lifestyle to be a little less stressful, if that makes sense?
So there's a few things. So the first thing is I found a mentor, right? So that turbocharged, that eliminated a lot of errors that I may have made. If you make an error buying a single family rent home, it might cost you $10,000, $20,000. You screw up an apartment complex, it can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I think that was one of the biggest things right there. That was kind of my tipping point. But then, more tactical maybe would be that I started a meetup. And this is before I had heard of Meetup back in the day, but 2011, I started a Meetup with me and one other guy. We would get together every Wednesday at a Starbucks and talk about real estate and everything we had learned the previous week. Well, that went for probably 6, 7 years. And the two of us, it grew to about 400 to 500 people. So, I started to create a name. I started to have people get comfortable with me, know, like, and trust me because they got to see me weekly. And it wasn't about me, but I was just one of the people at the meetup. Now, again, I started it, but they got to interact and they got to know, like, and trust me. Like I said, I've had people sign on my first deal out of that meetup. I had no experience. I had no job. I didn't have a college degree, but two people were meeting with me for about 6 to 9 months, felt comfortable enough with me to sign on my first loan. So I think that was probably the biggest key outside of a mentor.
Excellent. So hiring that mentor to get to watch for those blind spots, watch for those challenges, someone who's been there before. And then second, starting a real estate meetup, which led to building your trust and rapport and partners who you're helping out to grow the business together.
Right. And, a lot of people nowadays say, oh, yeah, but Bruce, that was 2011. There are a billion different podcasts, meetups out there. Well, they talk to me about podcasts too. It's like, I don't care. Start one anyways. Everybody's, it doesn't matter. If you're good, you provide value. I don't care how many trillions of podcasts or meetups there are. You will rise to the top because people will start spreading the word that I really get something different out of this podcast or out of this meetup. So I don't want people to be scared to start something because, other people have done it. Well, somebody's done everything just about, right? The iPhone was not the first smartphone. It was definitely not the first cell phone. So that's a big message I try to get across to people. Just get out there and do it.
Love that, right? Yeah, there's the fundamentals, and just give yourself a shot and go for it, and add value, and keep the customer, the client, or the partner first.
Sure.
So let's shift a little bit. So in our first mini episode, we touched on some capital gains tax challenges. I'm curious, how do you help navigate that for people who are either coming in and selling an asset, who want to invest with you? Let's imagine they're selling a 10-unit apartment complex worth $800,000, and you have a $20 million apartment complex ready to go. How are you navigating that tax deferral? And second, once you're there and you sell these deals, how are you navigating the tax deferral back out? What are you doing there to help mitigate or defer that?
So on the front end, there's not a lot, right? So we're not doing opportunity zones. We're not doing tenants in common. So there's no way for people to bring capital gains into my deal. It's just not possible. Now, I know there are different, I think, Delaware chartered investment vehicles that people can do that with. And then, of course, you have the opportunity zone. So there are ways for people to shield capital gains from a previous project into a deal, just not the way I structure deals.
And
But
by
then
the way,
on the
that's consistent with a lot of syndicators and operators I've talked with. I mean, 95, 97% of them don't allow a 1031 into their deals because A, it's too complicated. And then B, a lot of them are still not, I mean, if a deal happens to be an opportunity zone, they may structure a fund to do that. But that's very common because it seems to be too complicated, and they like to keep everything pretty simple. Is that what you found too?
Well, that's true, but that's not the real answer. The real answer is it's not allowed, right? So to do a 1031 exchange, you have to sell and buy with the same taxpayer identification number, social security number, EIN, whatever. If you're selling as a human being, as an individual with a social, you're going to invest at buy deal with an EIN, totally different numbers. You're not allowed to do it, right? Like I said, there are some other vehicles that have been created I think over the last 5 or 10 years that can facilitate things like that. But when you're investing just directly with just a regular old everyday syndicator, it's just not possible because again, you're selling with one ID number and you're buying with another. So it's just not allowed.
Right. The whole entity must move in that
Okay.
world. So then separately, what happens when you, let's say you have 10 investors in a deal and the deals come full cycle, you're ready to sell. What are you doing there to help defer tax?
So that's interesting because that was part of the thing that I talked about in the first little mini interview we did that I was led to believe this is just impossible, maybe not impossible, but super difficult because you got to get 51% of the people to move forward or 51% of the equity to move forward. And even if you do, you got to do a drop and swap. None of that was true, right? So I finally found a qualified intermediary, a QI, that this is what they do all day, every day. So I talked with them. They said, no, you just tell me how much of the sale proceeds are going to be set aside in escrow with me to purchase the next property. And there will be the tax avoidance, I guess, the tax deferral with that money. But anybody that wants their money out, they could take their money out. They'll just pay their taxes and go on their merry way. So what we offered said, look, tell us if you want to move forward. And if you want to move forward, do you want to move forward with everything? Do you want to maybe just roll your original basis into the next deal and take your profit off the table, pay taxes on the profit? Do you want to, you could split it up however you want to, guys, or you could take all of it out, pay your taxes, go do whatever you want to. So we gave them those options. We rolled about 50% of our sale proceeds into the next deal. So we took a 120 unit deal and bought a 200 unit property with it. So we got a better property, a bigger property, a nicer property. So the 1031 worked exceptionally well. Again, the key is you have to find somebody that knows what they're doing and be careful who you're asking advice because a lot of people, they think they know, but they have no clue.
Exactly right. Yeah, we face it every single day with the deferred sales trust, right? And that exact scenario. There's certain qualified intermediaries who allow it as a backup plan for a failed 1031, which we just saved a $7.6 million, 128 unit multifamily failed 1031 exchange into the deferred sales trust, not to be confused with the Delaware statutory trust. And most QI companies either A, don't know about it, or B, have never done it, or C, just don't want to know about it, right? They just say no, 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 no. And you go, well, why would, as a client, ever go to a QI company who doesn't know that there's a backup plan that's been proven for 24 years, thousands of closes, all the IRS audits, and at least consider or have it as a backup. So we face it every day. That being said, too, what's also unique for our listeners who are learning about the deferred sales trust is that even let's say those other 5 folks who didn't want to do a 1031 and wanted to take their cash, oftentimes why they're doing that is because they want or need liquidity, right? So they've been in a deal for 5 or 7 years, let's just say, and they don't necessarily want to tie up all of their equity for 5 or 7 years, right? And so what they want is to have access to that. Well, what's nice about the deferred sales trust is you can have kind of the best of both worlds. You can defer the tax and also have liquidity, right, along the way. And you can each have your own individual deferred sales trust or just pay the tax too. So it's kind of a hybrid in between the two, depending on, of course, the client's needs and their goals and all of those things. But I thought I would just mention that. That being said, what do you think about opportunity zones? Have you been, have you considered doing any of those yourselves, or what do you like, don't you like? And what's kind of your thoughts on those?
Well, I'm open to anything that I think is viable, but for our business plan, currently it's not viable at all. It's just not practical because now I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know quite a bit of it. So if I go out and buy a piece of real estate, I have to double the cost basis in that property, right? It's great for a developer. It's not great for what I do. I buy fully stabilized, well run assets that I can come in and run better usually. But for me to spend $10 million to buy a property, well, now I got to spend $10 million more to improve it or tear it down and rebuild it. I can never do that. I bought the 200 unit property. We put $600,000 in rehab. That's a pretty big rehab in our world if it's not a complete tear down. So that's why it's never worked for us. If we get to a point where we start doing development, well, yeah, it would absolutely work and we would absolutely be interested. But again, it just doesn't fit our business plan right now.
That makes perfect sense. Exactly what you're saying is if you buy a deal for 10 million, you need to spend at least 10 million or more in improvements or additions in order to qualify and actually check off that first check box. But if you're not, then it's challenging. So yeah, if you're a developer who happens to have land and is going to be, bought the land for $1 million and it's going to spend $3 million to build, great, you're in good shape. But if you're just buying existing multifamily or existing projects that have some value add component, then it just doesn't work. So that makes sense. Let's jump in a little bit into your book too. Any other thoughts, or even your coaching? So maybe walk us through what you provide for and who your ideal mentee might be for your program.
Well, my ideal mentee would be somebody like me. You've got money. I don't want people that come to me saying, "Hey, no money, no debt, no credit, all that." No, that can work 1 out of 1,000 times maybe, but that's crap for the most part. So understand you have to have money. You have to have wherewithal and means to start. But it's somebody that has saved their money over their lifetime. It's hard for me to work with anybody that has no money because they expect to go out and raise it all. Well, if you're not going to put money into your own deal, most people will not give you any money for that deal. But it's somebody that maybe they have money, they're not satisfied with their career, they don't like their career. Maybe they do, but they've been contributing to a 401k, an IRA, a KEO, whatever those things are. But they realize, oh my God, I just got hammered again after getting hammered in 2009 in the market, getting hammered in 2000 and 1999 in the market. I want something that is proven, is rational, is backed by physical assets, something that I can go out and touch. So it's somebody that wants, let's say an annualized return of anywhere from 15 to 25%, heavily tax advantaged. But again, it's somebody that has money and they're just looking for something different because the existing thing, the status quo, the dogma they've been taught their whole lives, it's just not working for them.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Have money, not satisfied with their career, and are looking to really have a love and a passion and a vision for why commercial real estate is and I believe the best risk-adjusted rate of return. Mobile home parks, senior housing, multifamily are my three favorite that I invest in personally too. So yeah, right. Versus a stock market that can just be wild, right, and kind of a lot of it out of your control, right? It's world policy, it's wars, it's pandemics, it's so many things that are beyond. But if you can own an apartment complex or a mobile home park or even senior housing and provide a service for people who need that. Now, of course, Corona's it's been some challenges with that, with potentially, in California they said no evictions, right, and for a short
Right.
period of time, and in rent control. There are some challenges depending on what state you're in for those things. But I'm curious, how have your collections been these past couple months, where a lot of people thought, no one's going to pay, but a lot of my clients are saying no, most of them have. And we worked out some challenge, from some challenges, but at least most of them are above 90% collections. But what have you seen?
So March was when it all happened, right? So March we had a pretty full month of collections. April was the first time we were worried, being, oh my God, we don't know what to expect. We collected about 96 to 97% of a normalized month. So we were good. And then May comes and you're thinking, well, surely it's going to start to catch up with us. So May, hold on, guys. I'm telling all my investors, hold on. We do not know what to expect. It could get bloody. Well, we out collected April with May. So May was stronger than April. It was even stronger than March for two of my properties. It was crazy. So I still don't feel comfortable, though. I'll be very honest, because there's been all this stimulus pumped into the system that people are getting more in unemployment than they got for their job that they actually worked at. They're getting stimulus of $2,400 to $3,400 sometimes, depending on their family situation. So all that's come into the system, but now it's all been paid back out if there's not more steps of stimulus to come. And I'm not saying politically if I approve or disapprove of it, but if more doesn't come out and businesses don't open at full scale, then eventually it is going to catch up with us. I think the next worrisome time for most people is September, because that's when most of the experts I've talked to think all of the stuff that's been pumped into the system will finally have completely worked its way through the system, and now they can't pay. So again, this month we just finished May, and we're at about 99% collected. Two of our properties, like I said, out collected March and April.
Thanks for sharing that. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Let's hope the economy gets back in full force again, and jobs that were lost, as many as possible, get back, and we get some stable incomes coming in. So that being said, are you ready for the lightning round?
Absolutely.
All right. Bruce, knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, and what's the one golden nugget you would make sure you would do, or something that you would know?
Don't do something that you think you like. Be real with yourself. Do you really like what you're doing? If you don't do it. Life is too short. I got a friend, I want to protect names, but I got a friend that he's afraid to leave his job because I won't have my six-figure income. I won't have health insurance. Yet there was one day he actually put a gun in his mouth. What the hell? It is not worth it, dude. So I would tell myself, get out there, cut the retail cord, just get out there, figure this out. Don't do this for 20 years, get really fat, get really depressed. And it's just not worth it. Life is way too short for that. So that's the biggest thing. Just have courage, go out there, find something that you like. Even if what you're doing now pays you $250,000 a year, but you hate everything about it, it's destroying your personal life. Take a $50,000 a year job, but be happy at it. There's nothing wrong with that. Scale back your life, maybe, but isn't it worth not being dead? Right. So that's my biggest thing to myself. Luckily, I never got that far, but I know a lot of people do.
No, well said. And it needs to be talked about more. You're right. And I think, too often society and the world and education, they tell us there's certain things that are going to fulfill us and make us happy, but it's just the opposite, right?
Right.
They're short lived, and they're not completely fulfilling. And that's where, as a Christian, I believe it's only God can provide that, that the hole that's in all of us, to really fill us up. That being said, what's the one book that you recommend or have gifted the most in the past year, Bruce?
A lot of it goes back to some of the stuff we're talking about. Honestly, the biggest one that I recommend, it was probably two. It's Killing Sacred Cows by Garrett Gunderson. He talks about cash flow banking. He talks about insurance. He talks about, again, the dogma that we've all been fed our whole lives. Go to work for somebody else for 40 to 50 years, put money in an IRA, 401k, and okay, by the time that's over, you could barely move if you're in your 70s. So, anyways, Killing Sacred Cows, he's poking holes in conventional wisdom when it comes to money. So it's that one. And it's really, well, for me personally, I've been giving this out a lot, is What Would the Rockefellers Do? Again, it talks about cash flow banking. A lot of people are listening to Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman saying that, look, you have to buy term. Whole life is a ripoff. It's ridiculous. Buy term and invest the difference. There's a whole lot of reasons why that is a really bad idea. And until, going back to an earlier conversation you and I had, until you find people that really understand it and can show you the way to properly execute cash flow banking, you're not going to understand it. And it's a big deal. It is a huge wealth preservation, asset protection, and wealth generating thing that most people just don't understand.
Absolutely. And I'm just scratching the surface to learn more about that. But that is fascinating, interesting, and yeah, what the Rockefellers and a lot of the ultra most wealth that goes back centuries have used. So, give me a digital or mobile resource you've recommended for your business.
Well, it's not very easy for very many people to implement until they have scale, but we have partnered with a portal for our investors. We partnered with a company called Invest Next, and we were going to build a portal for our investors, but it was just cost prohibitive. It was going to sidetrack us from the things that we're really good at. So we got involved with them. It's a one-stop shop, because before we were doing because we do monthly updates, financial and narratives. We were doing a monthly, and I would just go through Google. Once you get to too big a mailing list in Google, it won't let you send. You have to break it up into 2 or 3 different emails, because it will only allow you to email to 99 people at a time. So it wasn't really easy. The InvestNext things, it allows us to communicate more effectively. They have one place to go for all their updates, for the performance of all their investments, for a way to invest in the next deal that we're doing. Brought it all in house. It's not cheap. Now, I don't know if they would appreciate me saying this or not. I don't know if it's public knowledge, but we pay $1,500 a month for it. But it was money super well spent. Again, your first deal or two, you might not be able to justify $1,500 a month, but that's been the biggest game changer for us.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. What's your favorite leadership quote or theme that you live by, Bruce?
Huh. Well, okay. So theme, I guess, is where I'll go. It's a one-word theme, really. It's empathy, right? Treat people the right way, right? Doing the right thing is always the right thing. One of my big things at our management company is, guys, look, we have company handbooks, we have employee handbooks, we have processes and procedures and SOP and all this stuff. When this pops up, this is what you do. Follow it by the book until you can't follow it. And they're like, what does that mean? Follow it until I can't follow it. If what you're about to do, because it's a policy or a procedure, is not the right thing to do for a human being on the other side of this transaction, do not do it. Explain to me why you did what you did, right? You have to be autonomous enough and be able to use your own brain to know that, okay, it doesn't really work in the situation because the person on the other side of it is going to be negatively impacted, or we're not taking care of them properly. Explain to me why you did what you did. No harm, no foul. So that's the biggest thing. It's empathy and using your brain, right? Don't just blindly follow orders and follow a book.
Love it. What are you curious about right now, Bruce?
I'm curious about everything, dude. I want to know why I'm here, how I got here, where I go after this is all over. Um, you know, just like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always trying to make myself better. I'm sorry, I don't know how to do anything succinctly here, right? So I was at, I started up another meetup and I asked the room. We got 50 to 70 people in the room. Said, okay, let's go around the room. Everybody just start throwing out things. What podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading or listening to? What masterminds are you a part of? Crickets. Absolutely nothing. Like, how is this possible? Why? People, they put their head down, they contribute to the 401k, they do all that stuff, and they don't think about what's going on around them. They're not trying to make themselves better. And I just don't understand that. It just doesn't make any sense. But like I said, I'm terribly inquisitive. I'm always trying to figure out, well, one of my properties in North Austin, they said, you can't put granite in the hood, in the kitchens and the bathrooms. Like, why can't I? Well, because we never have. They won't work here. Okay, that's dogma, right? Again, I don't accept dogma ever. You give me a dogmatic answer, I'm going to throw it back in your face and say, look, okay, I appreciate your closed-mindedness. Works for you. I'm happy. I will go test it for myself. And chances are, sir, you're probably right, but I'm not going to accept, it's because it's just, you can't do it. Why? Because you can't. So I tried it. It worked out fabulously well. So, that's the thing. Just always be curious, always be learning. I spend, before we had lockdown, right, and I can't go to the bookstore anymore, I would probably leave 4 to 6 hours every week of my life to just go sit in a bookstore, to just unplug, turn my phone off and go sit in a bookstore and read anything I could find to read. So it's just staying plugged in, open your mind and be open to different experiences.
Love that. Thank you so much. And this will be our last question, and then we'll talk about how our listeners get in touch with you. So, Bruce, after all your success as an apartment syndicator and as an author and as a coach, and making a big transitional shift during your lifetime, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to reach for new heights?
Well, I'm the weird guy that I irritate everybody around me. And I know I am. I'm the eternal optimist, right? It's bad right now. Okay, yeah, you're right. It's bad right now. It's horrible right now for X or Y or Z or now, the black swan event of this virus. Keep your head up. What's the alternative? Hide from the world, retreat, and die silently in your bed? No, get out there. Do it. Make moves. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I forgot what you asked me now.
No, that's how you stay centered in your values, by being an internal optimist and despite the challenges, finding ways to just grow and continue to press on. And the second part is just how do you stay encouraged to charge for new goals, right? So you've reached a level of success, high success. How do you stay encouraged to reach for new heights or new goals?
Well, I'm very goal oriented, so I'm always writing down goals. A guy I know, David Osborne, has been very instrumental in me keeping that in the front of my brain. But I'm very goal oriented, and some of the goals, honestly, are materialistic, right? I'm going to make I make okay money. I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to make more money. But it can't be all to hide in a closet or under your bed. And, you got to enjoy some of it. So some of my stuff, some of my goals are materialistic. I want to own a baseball team. I do. But that keeps me driven to keep getting bigger and better, because the more money I make, the more people I'm helping. It's that whole thing. If I help enough people, get what they want, I can have whatever I want. It's that maxim, but it's the truth. So I just need to go help more people, which will turn into more help for me. I will own that baseball team someday. And I have an adult stepdaughter with autism. I want to make enough money to go out and start a nonprofit without having to go raise a ton of money for this nonprofit, start it myself, me and my wife. And we're going to open a 24 to 36 unit apartment complex that will be for adults with intellectual disabilities. And they can live there for free if they can't afford it. It'll be on a sliding affordability scale, but it'll be a safe place for these adults to live, to not be bullied, to be picked on, to be ostracized, because it still happens even with adults. So, those are the things that keep me going. Because again, we do well for ourselves, but to do those types of things, I got to do a lot more well than I do now. So that's what keeps me motivated.
That's beautiful. And that's the answer I was looking for, a chance to give back with all the gifts you've been given. Well, where can our listeners find you if they want to get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to connect?
The best way, really, the top two things would be the website, apt-guy.com. There you can read a little bit more about what the book is about, decide if you think it's worth buying for yourself. We have lots of resources there, but also probably, the two different social things that I'm on the most would be LinkedIn and Instagram. So look me up on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm very active, write articles, and try to help out any way I can without any kind of an ask. So yeah, follow me socially too.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you, Bruce, for being on the episode, for sharing your story, right, and how you help people. I would encourage you to keep using the gifts you've been given to make a difference, and to own that baseball team, right, and to start that that nonprofit to help more people. And also want to thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy is the best way for you to grow your wealth. Thank you so much.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.